Howdy everyone! So you may have heard of speedqueen washers and dryers or are looking to purchase one. If you haven't heard of the brand, speedqueen is a commercial laundry appliance manufacturer that also makes washers and dryers for home use. They often compare their residential machines to their commercial machines, claiming that they are built with quality American parts and are engineered to last 25 years or 10,400 cycles in the average home. However, this isn't always the case. Today I'd like to share with you my 3-year honest review of the speedqueen brand, going over my ownership experience with their two most popular washer and dryer pairs, the TR7 Perfect Wash and the TC5 Classic Clean. So without further ado, let's find out the truth about speedqueen. A few years back, I was in the market for a new washer and dryer. After tons of extensive research, I chose the TR7 and DR7 washer and dryer pair because I wanted something that would clean the clothes well and stand up to the test of time. At the time, speedqueen seemed like the best option, and due to availability, we traveled over 150 miles to pick up the set, and after hearing so much good about speedqueen, their machines, their customer service, and the brand as a whole, we were eager to start using them. At first, these machines seemed great. There were plenty of options to choose from, they were whisper quiet, and finally, we had a new washer with an agitator. This classic-looking agitator left me with full confidence in the machine that it would clean anything I could put in it. However, after a few washes, I started to notice that the clothes were not being cleaned and rinsed thoroughly, even when washed on the heavy-duty cycle with warm water. I had to thoroughly pre-treat stains and soak clothes and linens in the sink before washing them on a super soiled cycle with an extra rinse and a pre-soak just to get them clean enough to wear. I thought, okay, I must be doing something wrong. But after trying 3 different types of detergents and nearly every cycle the machine had to offer, my results stayed the same. Turns out the reason for this mediocre wash performance was speedqueen's Perfect Wash system, which utilizes an agitator that's bolted to the wash basket and spins the basket quickly, then reverses, rather than utilizing a transmission with a real agitator that moves back and forth to properly clean the clothes, which is what speedqueen was well known for before the introduction of Perfect Wash. Not long after, I went online and found out that I wasn't the only one having problems with wash performance. Many other people had the same complaints as I did with the speedqueen Perfect Wash system, stating that tedious amounts of effort and long cycles were required to get clothes clean enough to even wear. In fact, this Perfect Wash system was and is so poorly rated that in 2019, a year after speedqueen fully transitioned to the new Perfect Wash system, they had to reintroduce their old transmission-driven wash action in a model called the TC5, which far outperforms the Perfect Wash system. I will mention this machine more later in the review. Either way, I eventually found a workaround which involved running a heavy-duty cycle on autofill and only loading the machine half full of laundry. Although this resulted in acceptable wash performance, it was an added inconvenience while doing laundry due to the machine's already small 3.2 cubic foot capacity. However, at this point, I had finally gotten the machine to clean the clothes enough to wear, so I was neutral with it. Now let's look at another thing speedqueen is highly praised for: their reliability and build quality, and boy do I have some things to share with you. Now, speedqueen claims that their machines will last 10,400 cycles, or an equivalent to 25 years of laundry.
Proven to last 10,400 cycles, or 25 years worth of laundry. So you know you're getting the quality, durable product generations of people have come to know and love.
However, I find this to be very untrue. 16 months into the machine's life, the TR7 would start acting erratically every few cycles, stopping in the middle of wash cycles and throwing certain error codes. At first, I thought it was a power issue, but I had my home's electrical system professionally checked and there was no issues with that. Eventually, the machine would stop an error on every wash cycle, making the machine pretty much unusable. And the machine would refuse to unlock the lid with laundry and water inside. Since the machine had a full 7-year parts and labor warranty on it, we called speedqueen's customer service to schedule a repair date. Much to our surprise, the nearest available service date was 3 weeks away. This was due to the fact that we lived further than 50 miles from an authorized speedqueen retailer, quite literally 4 miles out of their range, and due to speedqueen's lack of funding for long-distance service calls, anything out of range was automatically booted to the back of the list. This would be the beginning of a very exhausting process dealing with speedqueen customer service, Fred's Appliance, which is their service provider, a non-functional machine, and a family of 4's growing dirty laundry pile. I will try my best to describe the following events in a condensed manner using dates, times, and stuff like that to keep it clean and simple. August 22nd. First service call. The service tech arrived and looked over the machine, and the diagnosis came back that the machine would need a water level pressure sensor, despite the codes corresponding to the lid switch system. During the service call, the machine was able to complete the unfinished cycle, so I attempted to use it again after the service call. This time I wasn't so lucky, because the machine quit again, locking a set of bed sheets in for another 27 days while we waited for a back-ordered part to arrive. September 19th, the service tech installed the water level pressure sensor and tested the machine. It performed fine until the final spin cycle where it threw the same lid switch error. He requested an order for the lid switch and lock, and the next available service date was October 10th. I would like to interrupt here and add that the incorrect diagnosis was not the service tech's fault. I personally witnessed him call into speedqueen's technical service repair line, and their supposed engineer stated that even though there was a lid switch code, that he was to replace the pressure switch first before they went any further. Anyhow, October 10th arrived, we installed the new lock and switch, and the machine would still not operate. After the tech left, we contacted speedqueen's customer service again with a request to bring this situation to their escalation team to hopefully aid in a faster machine repair or possibly a replacement, because this was going into month 3 without a working washer. We received this response. They ended up shipping a new output board for the machine, which was to be installed on October 31st. The machine ran fine for a few loads after the service call before emitting a burning smell and throwing multiple error codes, including wiring, motor, and sensor faults. During the service call, the machine was confirmed to be wired properly, so that wasn't the issue. Either way, it was November 6th, and we desperately needed a washer, as frequent weekly trips to a laundromat that was not close was becoming impractical and very expensive. We removed the TR7 from service and picked up and installed another speedqueen set, the TC5 and DC5 Classic Clean pair. I still had faith in speedqueen, and I figured that one terrible machine was not enough to abandon the brand entirely. After choosing their best rated model, I installed them myself in this video here and was very satisfied with the wash performance. Clothes were instantly coming out cleaner than they were in the TR7, and my family finally had a working machine to use after months of downtime. On November 16th, speedqueen's escalation team finally deemed the machine hazardous or unrepairable and finally agreed to replace the machine, but they would not ship a replacement until after the holidays, almost 2 more months. speedqueen was not aware of our replacement, and they refused to give us a machine that was already at our dealer because they wanted to make a new machine with a new serial number for this reason. They wanted to keep the warranty and history from the old machine. This was one of the many in-between-the-lines policies from speedqueen where they would only cover so much labor before only covering parts. If we had had one more service call for the old TR7, the labor budget would have run out, leaving us with hundreds of dollars in repair and labor fees. They were going out of their way to make sure that they didn't have to help us anymore. Remember, they advertise a full 7-year parts and labor warranty, and they even mention, on film, that it is non-dependent and they strive to bring, quote-unquote, quick service.
We partner with over 3,200 independent dealers in neighborhoods across the U.S., ensuring you have direct access to local experts and service providers.
This was not the case. On January 3rd, we finally received the new machine from our original speedqueen dealer, but since we already had a working and frankly much better performing set in use, we sold the new in-the-box TR7 and the old matching dryer. One defective machine? Fine. But my speedqueen troubles were far from over. The TC5 was performing as good as ever, cleaning clothes with ease. The TC5 worked well over the summer until one day in September, the machine would stop in the middle of the cycle and display an error code. The pressure sensor had failed, just like it had in the TR7. The following events were nearly identical to those that I experienced with the TR7, except with a twist. Since the last service call fiasco, speedqueen introduced yet another between-the-lines policy. Due to our residents just barely exceeding their 50-mile from a service provider limit, they tried to make us find our own service provider and then would cover parts, but only up to $250 in labor, which when talking about hourly rates including driving time, would barely cover the first machine diagnosis call, not any actual repairs. We did not feel that this was fair, especially considering that this was the second time we've had a problem with their machines. After quite a bit of back and forth with the customer service team, they finally decided to send Fred's Appliance down again and cover more labor as they should. After 10 days, a machine diagnosis, part order, and another 2 weeks, the lid switch finally arrived and was installed. The repair, however, was not successful because the lid switch had already somehow damaged the main output board, once again the same part that had failed in the TR7, and although the machine would accept cycle and start button input, it would attempt to start a cycle for about 20 seconds, then throw a communication error leading to the output board. Hit start and watch. It won't initialize. Thankfully, it did this on the same service call, so the technician was able to place an order for an output board even after speedqueen technical service objected multiple times. Although it would be another 3 weeks before it arrived. Our service tech even stated that he had replaced plenty of these boards in the new computer-controlled speedqueens, so there was a very high demand for them. So we wrote in and requested that this part be shipped directly to our residence to speed up the process, and it arrived a week before the service call. I decided this time to go rogue and install the board myself, which was very straightforward, and thankfully returned the machine to operating condition. However, this only lasted for 5 loads. On the 6th load, the same communication error showed up, and the machine was once again out of service. Now, I'd like to take a moment to stress how big of a hassle having no working washer during the holidays is, especially when the nearest laundromat was an extended 30-mile drive away. I'm sure most of you know how important it is to have such a major appliance working during the holidays, especially when hosting guests and such. To add insult to the injury, speedqueen's technical service and escalation team had 2 weeks off for the holidays, so they bumped our service appointment all the way to January 25th, nearly 50 days away. I don't know about you, but I was extremely frustrated by this, especially when one of the speedqueen people told me that it wasn't their problem. Thank goodness I had recently set up another machine at a different location, and I was able to use that as needed, but it was still miles away from home. Counting the machine's downtime, we had now made over 15 trips to do laundry elsewhere, sometimes at our expense. By the time it was January, traveling to do laundry was becoming very, very inconvenient and tiresome, and speedqueen's warranty and assistance had proved to be even worse than their machines. I was extremely disappointed that such a highly rated brand that was supposed to make the best machines available today turned out to be an overpriced, overrated, greedy manufacturer that did not care at all about customer satisfaction or living up to their very promising advertisements. After that, I had had enough. I then placed an order for a new set of machines from a different brand, Maytag. January 14th. The new Maytag machines arrived and I immediately installed them, moving the still broken TC5 and its matching dryer to the garage. I still had 10 days to go until the next service call, and apparently speedqueen was completely fine with this because once again they were not aware of our replacements. Hey, no skin off their back, right? January 25th finally rolled around and the service tech was prepared this time. He had not only brought the output board that was originally supposed to be installed weeks ago, he had brought a cycle selector board, a water level pressure sensor, a new water inlet valve, and an entire wiring harness. After hours of work, all the parts got installed, meaning the machine was basically rebuilt. We tested it thoroughly and there was no issues. The machine was finally fixed, hopefully for good. Now you may be thinking, how can 2 different models have the exact same issue? I thought the Classic Clean machines were similar to the old machines. Well, the Classic Clean drivetrain components are, but the rest of the machine is built on the same platform that the TR series machines are. The common denominator here is the low-quality computer boards that, by the way, are not American-made as speedqueen promises. In fact, most of the machine's parts are sourced globally, mainly from Mexico and China. As you may be able to tell, these boards are extremely problematic and prone to premature failure. When one minor thing like the pressure sensor goes out, another Chinese-made part of course, it can severely damage the board and other electronics in the machine. Basing it off the repairs from both machines, the only way to get a machine fully running again after this is to basically rebuild it, meaning all new sensors, boards, a wiring harness, and etc., which SpeedQueen won't always cover, especially if you didn't register your machine for their warranty early on. I decided to tear down the TC5 at one point when it was inoperable to show you guys the many problematic electronics and parts that this machine is hiding behind its classic appearance. Here we go. Here we see the main output board. This board controls pretty much every function in the machine, but it can be severely damaged by even a small sensor, meaning that other sensors in the machine will also go out and not operate properly. As I mentioned earlier, if this happens, tons of parts will need to be replaced before the machine can properly run again. Now let's pop the hood. Under here we find the water mixing valve and the pressure switch, as well as the lid switch. When the lid is closed, the extension on the hinge pushes up on the lever of the switch, actuating the switch, closing the circuit, and allowing the machine to operate. However, this can have wear and tear effects over time. Let me show you why. The lid switch is only held together by two little metal prongs that are bent to spec. These will eventually get bent out of spec, causing actuation issues, thus causing the machine not to operate. Hiding behind the old school looking control panel is yet another troublesome computer board. This is the cycle selector board that attaches to the knobs and sends data to the main output board. Overall, I believe that SpeedQueen, like other brands over the years, has rapidly declined in quality and they are not worth the expensive price tag, nor do they live up to the hype. When it comes to their advertising, it appears to me that SpeedQueen is riding the coattails of the yesteryear, advertising a 25-year machine or trying to make a machine look old-fashioned while hiding tons of electronics behind the mechanical-looking dials. They're simply using the name and legacy of the old SpeedQueens that were truly built to last, even ones made not too long ago. SpeedQueen gained popularity around 2015 when they were actually making the best machines on the market. Even some completely mechanical models were available from SpeedQueen that featured zero computer boards. In 2018, however, things changed for the worse when they introduced the TR series, and then got even worse in 2019 when they started to make the switch over to the cheaper computer boards and sensors. Their warranty, I also found out later, is a third-party insurance program that they use, and for that reason, they limit covered repairs, especially labor, if it gets too expensive for them. They also have to inquire to that insurance policy for parts, and they want proof of every little problem before a part is ordered, which really slows down the process. It's the exact same as buying a third-party protection plan on any other appliance, except they simply advertise a big warranty and build the cost into their already expensive price. I do hope that SpeedQueen can get back on track soon and start producing the quality American-made machines that they built their name on, and if or when that happens, I will update my review. That sums up my review of the SpeedQueen brand. I hope this video helped you with your research in some way, and I really appreciate your viewership. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a fantastic day and your laundry gets clean. See you later.